Welcome back to 21 Patriarch. I found out about Elliott Hulse probably like a lot of people did. I was watching some YouTube fitness guys and Elliott came up in the algorithm. And so when I found out he was going to be here, my exposure to him were just these little short clips. And, Elliott's talking about lifting and moving strong things. And I thought, this is kind of a meathead sort of guy. That's who he is. And then we went out for lunch. And I learned there's three things about Elliott that I like. Number one, he's an iceberg. So you have what's above the water. But as we talked, it became very clear to me this was actually a very deep, considerate man. And he just knows how to speak things the way us guys like it, which is plain and to the point. Then as I got to meet his wife, I realized he was a family man. That he actually has a family that he loves and cares about and respects them. And I've had the opportunity to meet his daughters, who are simply lovely, very feminine, very respectful, beautiful, happy. Anytime you see happy daughters and a happy wife, you know a guy's doing something really good. The third thing that I've learned about Elliott, and I saw this last night when we were out by the pool, when Elliott's with a guy, he is listening to them very with intensity. It's almost scary because he looks into your eyes and he's not thinking about what he's going to say next. He's actually just listening to you and he cares what you have to say. So Elliott is a man of depth. He's a man of the household, a man that cares about marriage and family, and he's a man that legitimately cares about whoever is in front of him at any given time. And that's why I've come to deeply respect Elliott. He's one of my favorite people to see when I come down here to Florida every year. So would you welcome Elliott right now to the stage?
That was great. Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate it, buddy. So my talk is about masculine initiation, obviously. And that's a term that maybe sometimes we hear and can romanticize, for lack of better terms, but make it seem like it's something more or maybe grand or base than we really understand, but it's built into our DNA and structure as men. And today I'm going to show you how. But first, I'm going to begin with what a society of uninitiated men looks like. Just look around us. When boys are born, they're boys until they're made into men. When girls are born, nature takes course and they become women. One of the big misconceptions that we have in our society, and I think it's a byproduct of some subversion, is that you should just know how to be a man. Any conversation about the definition of a man or what is a man or the need for teaching about being a man is often met with resistance. Who are you to say what's a man? Who are you to tell a man what is a man? Who are you to initiate men into men? And so men have been left to be boys. And we have a society full of boys. And I propose that one of the great losses of our time that was thrown away with all forms of tradition is this timeless, eternal, ever-present within our soul and in our bodies pattern for initiation. This initiation is biological, it's psychological. And when I use that word psychological or psyche, we got to remember that much of our mystical language or our spiritual language has been medicalized by the world we live in today, this culture we live in right today. The psyche is the soul. And so it's something soul and it's something eternal. It's part of the pattern of life, the spirit of life. We see it all around us. But as rational creatures, we can see it and we can prepare for it and we can facilitate these natural processes. Just like we know that when it's summertime, that in a few months, we better start preparing for winter. We see the pattern coming. And so we know how to initiate ourselves into new annual cycles. You know that it's not going to stay summertime. It's not going to stay fruitful. It's going to become dark very soon, and it's going to become cold very soon, and we had better prepare ourselves for that leg of the journey, the annual journey. When we were more agrarian, we were more in touch with that, but we still see those seasons around us, and we are affected by them deeply as well as superficially. Initiation is happening whether we know it or not. That's really what I'm saying. Whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we facilitate it or not, you are being initiated into something, hopefully something better, but we're always moving from one version of ourselves into another version of ourselves, from one state of being into another, from hopefully a less mature version of ourselves, boys, into a more self-actualized, mature version of ourselves, which is men. There's a system that our ancestors understood. Cross-culturally, anthropologists have discovered that there are principles to this masculine initiation. It was never random as it is today. When initiation is not recognized and honored by elders with strong process and desire to see men flourish, boys are left with pseudo-initiations. These pseudo-initiations come in the form of gangs. Promiscuity is a pseudo-initiation. Let me give an example. I've known of young men who, when they become the age that they start having testosterone, their fathers or big brothers took them to see prostitutes. That's the initiation now into a man. Well, is that so? Does that really actually mark the difference between a boy and a man, that you can put your dick into a woman and blow your load? I'm not so sure. Backtracking to women, just since we brought them up, nature initiates them. Now, they do also need the teachings of elder women, but the line is very obvious. The sentence ends with a period. You're now a woman. That doesn't happen with a boy into a man. There are some biological markers, but we have to be more conscious. Our ancestors understood this about what are we going to do with the raw stallion that's arising in this boy's body and mind, so that he could be of best value to himself and best value to our culture, our society, our tribe, our people. I discovered initiation most brutally in my 36th year of life. Many of you guys know the man on the right there. That's Elliot. That was a version of me that was fully formed in a particular useful ego version of myself that the world came to love. But right around the age of 36, I fell into a dark place, and that's what you see in the middle there. I fell into a realm of unknowing, instability, totally unsure of myself, not convinced that who I've been is really who I'm being called to become and be for the world, although he was so pleasing to both my ego, my life, and to the people that watched me and loved me and praised me and, well, also gave me ample reason to be proud. There's a pattern there too. I'm sure we've heard it, pride before the fall. But I allowed myself to go deeply into this catabesis. Catabesis is a word that means going down in Greek. They understood, as most of our ancestor cultures understood, that there will be catabesis, or death, before there's rebirth in the life of every single man. And if that catabesis is not recognized, appreciated, facilitated, dealt with care, handled in a respectable, honorable, resourceful way, well then we get what we get when we see most men who fall into a dark pit. Suicide, drug addiction, destruction of family, self-destruction. This is one of the things that's plaguing men today more so than ever, the taking of our own lives, because we don't understand that that sense that we should die is normal and natural, but it's not about our physical bodies. You don't have to off yourself. Your ego just needs a breakdown and a rebirth into a new order. I also have to point out that, like I said earlier, you can't stop the seasons. You can't stop the patterns. We know that it's summer, but winter is coming. We like to think that our lives are consistent and stable and that we're going on a very linear trajectory towards something. But that's never the case in anything we see happening in our world. It's unnatural. What we do live in is a world of spirals. We see it in the hero's journey. We see it in the seasons of the year. We see it all over the place, even the structure of our DNA. We're spiraling. They say that the universe, some scientists say, that the universe is spiraling. All the planets are literally just spiraling into outer space. So I say that because if we don't recognize that in our own lives and prepare for that, or prepare our young men for that through teaching and guidance, then it's going to happen anyway. The draw towards gangs, there's some good expressions of this, the draw towards sports. Football was very important as a means of initiation that fulfills all of the requirements for a pseudo-initiation, but a resourceful one. So they're out there. Your football coach puts it on you and smashes you in your face and makes you get down in the dirt and do hard work. But if we don't have that, God's going to do it for us. One of the big differences between that guy and the one in the middle is that that guy had both arms intact. God popped my both biceps before I got into that and tore my Achilles tendon, and I fell on my head and I hurt myself, and I was broken, damaged, dejected, and depressed. That's a blessing from God saying, hey, if you're not going to do it, I'll do it for you. I didn't know. This is a guy a little more akin to what you see in front of you today, but I'm still changing. That process from order to chaos to new order is happening in your life, and you're at some particular stage in this process all the time. It'd be good if there was a map, wouldn't you agree, for how to navigate this? Well, I propose that there is. A part of the map that's very evident in the world around us is found in something we learn in high school biology. Now, I'm going to start from the very crude, but we'll get very specific soon. I don't know why I remember this, but it's one of the few things I remember from biology in high school. And when I started learning about the process of initiation and these cycles of life, I recognized it in this right away. This is cell division or cell mitosis. Short story, it's one order, the single cell, going into chaos. Prophase, you see there starts to be a breaking down of things. There's a little bit more chaos. And then those lines represent tension. There's tension happening inside the cell. And there's chaos until there's a split. And then at the end of that process, you have a higher order of things, two cells. the one cell doesn't become two cells, or the single organism doesn't become a multi-organism, a higher version of itself, more complex version of itself, unless it goes through the stages of mitosis, a breaking down, a chaos, a destruction. Now, this is beautiful because it's built into our nature and doesn't require conscious attention. Cells don't build societies. So it's all sort of built in an animal way, in a natural way. But for man, this happens whether we like it or not, but the new order needs a sense of meaning and structure. Well, what is the new order and what am I ordered to? What is all this chaos going in my life and what am I being charged with destroying within me? That's where that sense of wanting to commit suicide comes from. There's a despair with it too because we feel like we're alone. But we're all going through this, so we're not. And there are principles for honoring it so that we're not lost. We don't lose our boys to effeminacy, degradation, or death. We see this collectively as well. This process or this cyclic nature, this spiraling of life doesn't just happen in the individual. I've pointed out how it happens in nature. We see it down to the cell division level. The universe is spiraling, but so is mankind. We see it collectively in our societies. And most of us are very obvious or we're aware, specifically most recently, with this cycle itself. Strong men create good times create weak men. Just think about the cell mitosis. There starts to be a break within the order and the structure. Good, strong men, good times equals structure and order, discipline and groundedness, surety, clarity. When weak men are involved, we're unsure. There's shakiness, there's chaos, there's something being stirred up within. Weak men create hard times, we're there. Things are breaking down. It seems dark. Chaos ensues and seems ever present and pervasive, almost like you can't get away from it because you can't. God's doing it too. The whole Bible, if you're paying attention, is the same thing through. In the grace of God, lost the grace of God. In the grace of God, lost the grace of God. In the grace of God, lost the grace of God. Hard times create what? Strong men, which means a new order is arising. That process can be hijacked, though. But I don't think God will allow it. It has to be a divine order, a higher order, every single time. Otherwise, it's degenerate. We've been initiated into degeneracy, and that's why we still have a sense of angst. So we see this all over. Order, chaos, new order. So when it comes to classic initiation, what our ancestors knew, Mircea Eliade and Victor Turner were two of the greatest anthropologists to bring forth this understanding of this ever-present process through all different types of cultures. It's not a Western thing, it's not an Eastern thing, it's not a European thing, it's not an African thing, it's not a Native American thing, although it seems as if we can only point to those cultures to show us how it's done, but that's not true. That has been romanticized. We're Western men, and there's a way for us too. But no matter what culture, what time, when this was honored, there were a set of principles and patterns that they knew. One of which is the overarching pattern. And it is always like this. There's a removal of the boy from the world of the mother. He must have a clean break from the world of the mother. That literally means mother. Think about the world we live in where there's so much mommy attachment, single mothers and mama's boys. That's neither here nor there, but it just shows you where we are. In order for that boy to become what he sees in front of him, he needs two things. The removal of the boy from the world of the mother. And it takes both women and men to recognize and facilitate this process. But the mother can't do it alone, obviously. There's an atonement with the world of the father, a movement into order. The word father comes from patriarch, pater, where we get the word pattern. What is spirit but pattern? I mentioned the pattern of the cycles that we're living in our world. That's called God's clock. That's his pattern. God is very intelligible if we're willing to pay attention, especially in the natural law. So it's an atonement to the natural law. It's an atonement to God the Father that then gives the boy meaning and purpose and vigor and focus on creating good times, carrying his torch, carrying his sword. He knows what's wrong and what's right. Today, just for contrast, we have no clean break from the mother. Literally and metaphorically, we're stuck with mommy. Now, it's either because there's destruction in the family, literally, and there is no father, or there's a father, or if the father is present, it reminds me of my friends' fathers growing up. I always wondered why. They were always fat and funny. My dad was lean and mean. So the father's there, but he carries no image of the father. He carries no real masculine imprint. He's still a boy too. Gynocentric world that makes it such that mommy's to be looked to for all kinds of guidance and meaning. But this is a perversion and it's wrong. You can get a 290-pound, 6'7" football player that will smash all of our faces to pieces. Big, strong, tough guys. But you say something about his mama, he'll break down and cry. But not just that, take his cell phone from him and see what happens. Give it back, give it back, give me back my... Give me back my porn, give me back my weed, give me back my drink, give me back my food, I gotta eat. Give me back my sensual gratification and comfort and material, sensational succor. Any kind of attachment, any kind of sin, any kind of disordered pleasure that keeps us stuck is a symptom of being stuck in the world of the mother. All those things that soothe is because we're craving our mama's tit. So there's always a form of austerity with the removal of the world from the world of the mother. You're physically removed from the mother, and the fathers would do it. I put this book, Iron John, because I learned a lot about this from this book in particular and others as well. For example, the boy is showing signs that he's riding the red horse, which means testosterone's coming up. That horse gets to be broken. Otherwise, he's a useless stallion. Nobody can ride him. And as a man, we're worth what we can do. This idea that being avant-garde and free doesn't exist for us. Doesn't work that way. That's maybe available for women in a different way too, though. No, we get to be broken so that we can rise up anew and useful. The fathers may come in, and I'm going to talk about process in a moment, but I'm just going to share this one as just one example. The elders, the fathers, the men of the society would break into the dwelling of the boy with his mother, boy has no idea what's going on because they keep it quiet because there must be a shock to break the ego. Strip him away from his mother. Mama, mama, who are these crazy men taking me away? Oh, you're about to learn. And the mothers would play along as well because they knew, well, the boy must become a man. Today, many fathers want to instill masculine values into their sons, but their mom is too afraid and won't let them. You can't take that boy out there and do that. You're not going to take care of him the right way. You're not going to love him the way I love him. No, because a father's love is critical. A mother's love is a mother's love. She'll love you till you rot. A father loves you in a way that builds you up. So that has to be, it has to be cultural. Everyone must know and be on the same board for turning this boy into a man. Movement of away from the world of the mother, atonement with the world of the father. The world of the father is the world of order, a new order. When the boy is removed from the old order of boy, he's broken through austerity and challenge, fasting, all creature comforts removed. You're going to stay out in the hot sun. You're going to lay on this pile of ants and let them eat you. You're going to, and they all require a wound. I'll tell you why in a moment. Pseudo-initiates understand this, and that's why they do hazing. But there's a purpose to the wound because it's an opening so that the ego becomes permeable and a new seed can be planted in. So this isn't sadistic pain. This is a medicine to open the womb or the wound that becomes a womb. The reason why God, for me, and for many of us it'll be the same, used my body to tear apart for this process is because he needed to break into my armor so that there would be an opening and he could plant a seed. That's what the austerity is about. They might make a boy jump off a cliff with a bungee. They might make him chase and wrestle a bear. All kinds of wild, crazy things. Now, they wouldn't make him do that if the men didn't know how to help him do it. But the whole idea is to put him into the face of fear, expose him to challenge and pain. How many boys ever get an opportunity to experience challenge and pain? Like I say, you take away their cell phone and their hot pockets, and then they're going to cry all day and believe that you owe them something. Where's my Lucky Charms cereal? Mom, it's not here yet. You're 14 fucking years old. Where's my binky? My baba? My comfort? So classic initiation includes that movement, and it's always present. Going deeper, by the way, I got to backtrack a moment. Forgive me. I kept reminding you that I experienced this at age 36. And it was great because about that same time I was open to learn the things that I'm learning right now, and it was God's doing so that I could share this with you. But in retrospect, I also began to recognize that at age 24, I had the same problem. I didn't know where I was going, what my life was about, and I had no semblance of grounding. I had my first child. We were living in my father-in-law's basement. I had just got fired from a job, and I was broke. I had no idea what I was going to do and where I was going. And then I remember between the ages of 12 and 15 having the same sort of thing. I'm drawing the pattern for you that I should have drawn earlier. But the cyclical patterns of 12. Between 12 and 15 years old, there's a complete removal of the old and a stepping into the new. It's the most obvious one that we know because that's when testosterone grows. But age 24 is interesting because I see more men come to me at that age than any other. That's the median age of the men who've generally, over the past 10 years, made their way into my life. They're looking for an initiator Because at age 24, they don't know what the hell to do with themselves. Total confusion and chaos in life. Am I a boy or am I a man? You're in the threshold. You're in Catabesis, and you'll be all right. I wish I remembered to say that before, but this reminded me because when I got to age 36, I could look back and things started clicking and making sense. And so God placed it in my life to see this in myself, see it in the world, and then gave me resources to facilitate the process, first for myself and for men. Knowing the movement away from the world of the mother and atonement with the father is good, but there also has to be structure because God is a God of order. He doesn't leave us to our own devices. Never. He's always got a plan if we're paying attention. And a lot of times we can decipher the plan by just looking at what he's doing. There are 4 requirements for the movement from one stage to another. Initiation requires these 4 processes. Without these firing on all cylinders, we fail. The number one thing that must be there are elders. There's no movement away from the world of the mother and atonement with the world of the father, spirit, meaning, purpose, clarity in life, if there are no fathers, if there are no elders, if there are no grown men that understand this and have compassion and a sense of purpose for what these boys will become. Clarity, not this, you have your truth, I have mine. Not this, I just want you to be a nice person. I just want you to be happy, doesn't exist. No, boy, what is your purpose and what are you doing? And let's get as clear as possible about that. Elders carry that because they are it, and an elder men showed them it and brought them to it. And so it's the same thing that they do with young boys. And when I say young boys, I don't necessarily mean teenagers. All uninitiated men, age 14, 24, 36, 49, it doesn't matter. It's always going on. And it doesn't just happen at those intervals. That's just a spectrum. It's just a map. It could happen when God decides it's time for you in your life. Here comes a crisis. Now it's time to grow up. When a crisis comes to you in your life, be thankful, be grateful. If something's taken away from you in your life, be thankful, be grateful, because God saw it fit that you go into a new phase of life. And he's taking away what shouldn't have been there. That's a part of what Catabesis is. It's a digestion of sorts, a removal of the waste and an integration of what's useful. So, bringing it back, elders must be present. We know we have a problem. Process must be present. Now that movement away from the world of the mother and atonement with the world of the father is the overarching theme, but they're done different ways depending on the culture. But it's always there. If you're living in Aboriginal Australia, it might look different than a boy in the Swiss Alps. But it's always there, and the elders know the process. Process also includes, and it's sort of mixed in with all of this, ritual symbol, theater, imagery, sounds, physical experience. It's not a mental thing. Real elders that understand process, that understand art and beauty. I listened to Arthur yesterday. Anybody else here did too? What did he say about art and its ability to subtly penetrate our soul? This process isn't just a rote process. It's not just a step-by-step thing. It's mystical in nature. It's religious in nature. It's symbolic. It's spiritual. But it's also very physical. So you'll notice those things as well. One example would be, there's an Aboriginal tribe that's mentioned in one of the books that I've read learning about this stuff, where they would knock a boy's tooth out. Boom, knock his tooth out. Every man in the tribe is missing one tooth. Well, the tooth is missing, but it's also a symbol, and it represents the death and rebirth he's experiencing that they tie back to their ancestor, Darwala. They have their meaning too. So elders in process, sacred space. The only way that this happens in a resourceful way is inside a container. Just imagine you got raw dough and you want to turn it into baked bread, which is useful. You got to put it in an oven, seal it, and turn up the heat. Sacred spaces like that, you're sealed off from the world. This doesn't happen very easily when you're carrying your iPhone in your pocket. This doesn't happen very easily when you got a belly full of Arby's, burgers and fries. This doesn't happen very well when you got to get up for school tomorrow morning. You got to get away from it altogether and be taken aside. I was blessed that I had enough momentum in my life that God called me aside. I didn't have to work. I had momentum and money. But when a man has responsibilities and jobs and a world that's not compassionate to these cycles, toughen up. Just get out there and keep going. Just stuff it down and pretend like nothing's happening. Oh, you're having a midlife crisis. Boo-hoo. No compassion for men. And the type of compassion that men need isn't the mommy's compassion of bleeding heart. The type of compassion men need are older men who say, you're going through an initiation. It'll be okay. Follow me. Wise elders. But he always removes them or takes them away into sacred space. It could be out in the wilderness. It could be a monastery. But it's away from the world of profane. It's sacred. And something, too, that's critical, the fourth, but by no means the least, is not just a sense of community. We understand community is important. We need people around us to affirm what we're doing. You go through this process and the community doesn't know what you're doing. They think that you're crazy. What, did you get involved with some cult or something? They don't understand. So you're not going to find it out there. But what happens when there are those that have the shared experience, maybe fathers that have experienced it before too, brothers that are there that are doing it with you, and we're all in this hot spot together? Christ says, where there are two or more gathered, I'll be there. Communitas is like the Holy Spirit. It shows up when men are committed to one thing. Once again, I think about football and two-a-day summer camps. Something happens that builds a bond with those men who are under the heat of the process of football. We build bonds. We know each other better. We'll die for one another in some way, shape, or form. But that's evoked. It's drawn out. Or it arrives like the Holy Spirit. That's called communitas. These are the four things that are required if we're ever going to reestablish this practice, which I propose is critical. We need this. We don't go any further without it. We have shades of it, both good and bad, but they're just fragments. I propose we need the whole thing. The recognition of it, and the elders to step in with a process that we all agree to, and communitas in a sacred space. I dream. And so, like most men that have experiences that cause them to grow, they begin to see its need in others, and they want to give it to them too. We spoke about that yesterday. You had this awakening, and you crave to give it to other men. It's natural. It's our compassion as men, because we want to see boys do well, young men do well. When I say boy, I don't mean younger. Some of my initiates have been older. It's just something we all need and will continue to need. So I attempted with grounding camp. This was my brainchild and attempt at disseminating this information, but creating a safe space with process and me as the elder. I didn't see anyone else carrying that banner, so I figured I needed to take it upon myself. But it was a process, because when I first started grounding camp, I had girls there, because I know pretty girls will bring boys. But women cool down a men's heated space with distraction and dissipation of energy. I started seeing it there. I'm a blue-pilled man too. Why not? All equal. Bring the girls in too. Dumb move. But it was fine. This was our first event where I kicked all women out. And then it started to take on heat. So in a way, I'm promoting, I guess you might say, but I'm bringing back grounding camp because of its need. And I invite anybody listening here who recognizes this need and may be a man called to eldership to do it in your community too, and who you're called to serve as well. But I think we need a bit more. Anyway, I'll get to that. Second part of my attempt here is something new that I've created called King Initiation. Maybe we can do it online and create a sacred space on an app that I created. Now I know that this is pale in comparison to what our ancestors knew we needed, but it's a start. It's where I'm trying to take it. I'm trying to get this going here. And so far, the results have been amazing. For 21 days, there's austerity, and you're held accountable by your peers in forums and weekly, daily gatherings. There's lots of fasting, semen retention, dopamine detoxing, getting away from the world of the mother, that anchor, those addictions and vice that hold us weak and effeminate, that never let go, or we let go of, so that we can rise. That's what this has been about, and so far, it's been amazing. Sometimes the initiation in its first part springboards the second. Just by breaking away from effeminacy through austerity, the soul sometimes automatically rises. But there's a process for rising too. Because austerity and challenge is one thing. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's simple to instill. You can all go home and start doing it right now. I'd begin with fasting. There's no breaking from the world of the mother with a fucking belly full of food. You got to be hungry. Physically, you must fast. You can go home and do that too. But the real question then becomes, and it's one that I wrestle with, but I feel conviction about, is what are we ordered to? We've got all forms of austerity and punishment and ways to rid ourselves of effeminacy, but we don't have a collective ideal. We still live in the egalitarian idea that we should all each have our own truth. Just imagine the boy that I showed earlier with the Spartan goes through the challenge and austerity and the pain and the breakdown to rise anew, but then the fathers say, now what do you want to do? It don't work that way. Men, being sons of God, are creatures of order. There's no rebellion in going our own way. That's a rogue warrior. He's no use to me in our society and the goal for which we're aiming. Atonement with the world of the Father in many ways sounds very obvious. I mentioned father and pattern. Pattern meaning archetype, spirit, God, Father. It's always atonement with the Father. Seems fairly self-explanatory, but what does that look like? What's that new order? I propose that as Western men, we are living in the fragments of a destroyed divine order in our society called Christendom. All of the beauty in architecture and science, the inspiration to build ships and cross the world, the foundation that brings us charities and help of the poor and the widowed, the heights of philosophical thinking, theological thinking, prayer, and liturgy, beautiful patriarchal liturgy. It's artwork. If anybody listened to Arthur's talk yesterday about art and paint, worship is a form of art too. A specific kind of worship, a ritual of sorts that is ordered and measured and has symbol and meaning, which all bring us cohesiveness and beauty, mission and vision. I propose, or I assert that we can call that God's kingdom on earth. And as Christ reminds us, our Father in heaven, hallowed be his name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That must mean that the Father of order, the Father of structure, the patriarch above has a plan, an administrative plan, a hierarchical plan, an ordered plan for what that would look like down here. I'm not the kind of guy that even likes the way that sounds, because it means institutionalized religion. Institutionalized reuniting. That's what it means to religion. And men create religion. Organized, institutionalized, returning to the Father. And that which built the greatest civilization that we know of, that all of Arthur's best art, you notice he showed ugly art and he showed beautiful art yesterday. All of the most beautiful art I challenged him yesterday when we had a conversation about what I'm proposing, and I said every single one of those artists were Catholic. We are a Catholic people that have been subverted. It's very easy to point at the serpent, and we look at all the revolutions started by the J's and the FMs. You can try to figure out what I'm talking about there. But it seeped into our midst. And so Christians are broken from within. Being objective as I possibly can, and I'm only a revert to the faith. I fell away for over 30 years. You can't look at the history after the church began to break 500 years ago. There's no such thing as beautiful Protestant art. It's a revolution no different than BLM and pussy hat, pink wearing feminists in the street. It's a revolt against patriarchy. It's a revolt against order and this idea that I should make mine. All I need is the Bible, and I'll make up my own. No need for magisterium, no need for authority, no need for order and structure or tradition. We'll just figure it out on our own. I don't think I have the picture up still, but I mock in a way by showing it was like church.com with a storefront and a motorcycle and a dilapidated car out front. Is that the kind of Christendom that God had in mind when he chose the most powerful empire, Rome, to spread his kingdom on earth? Rome is masculine. Rome is ordered. And when Rome began to crumble, God said, let's catch it with the Holy Roman Empire. His kingdom is not so small that we need to hide in home churches or garage turn into church or mere little circles of men making up their own. That's chaos, that's disorder. He chose empire to spread his light west. What are we ordered to? Are we ordered to beauty? Are we ordered to beautiful, what's true, what's right? Or are we ordered to our own designs? Initiation always requires submission. You don't come into the sacred space until you lose your face. No room for individualism out here. Even the American Revolution is spawn of a rebellion against Christendom, specifically the Catholic Church. That's why in America, there's more Protestants than Catholics. But worldwide, if you say Christian, they say Catholic. The American Revolution was a means to fulfill the desire for removal from what could be, because power corrupts. So I'm not saying it, the church wasn't a corrupted kingdom, but a kingdom blessed by God nonetheless. So now we have chaos, and America is a mess. This is not a Catholic nation. It wasn't built on Christendom. It was built on Freemasonic ideas, Enlightenment ideals that say, your truth, your truth, your truth, your truth. Imagine initiating a generation of men and ordering them to pop culture, promiscuity, sin, alcohol, idol worship through Hollywood, self-worship, through the willfulness and pride that we have parades about now too. It's what we got. But imagine a society that recognizes and facilitates initiation, breaking boys down so they could rise up and be men, and ordering them to majesty, kingdom, beauty, Rome, the most powerful kingdom on earth, still exists. And there's a reason why. God knows. What inspires this kind of art and architecture and real fruit that a man can give? A woman gives fruit through her womb, but a man who's ordered towards God, that's an artist, and our life is all art. When we're ordered, structure. What beauty in this structure. What beauty within these boundaries that are only available in a society that's ordered to God. I don't care how much you try to make pagan art seem beautiful, it pales in comparison to this. You're not going to show me any African craftsman and the shit that he makes compared to this. No Native American or Bush people or even what we have now today, garbage art on display, like there's something virtuous about trash. Arthur makes a good point when he points out these woke women artists, when they make stuff, he says, I can master that in a day. But can you do this? Notre Dame, Our Lady, is a very Catholic appreciation. Santa Maria. Columbus was a Catholic man, named his top ship after Mary. Mary inspires birth through men as the divine mother. With the revolution, Martin Luther had a devotion to Mary, but he opened the gate for the whitewashing of our faith. No beauty is created in a faith without her. No beautiful women can exist if they don't have her divine image, her example, because we see what we've got today. This is not about Mary, my last talk was, but this is about the beauty and the majesty and the might of an ordering of men towards something that's eternal, divine, but physically beautiful and ordered. And it's built on the story of this man. That Christians believe to be the Christ. And so it doesn't just live through our hands and the work of our sweat and what we create on the outside. It's an inner revolution, as he told us. His initiation through death and resurrection is for us all. But just like our Savior, we carry a burden of the cross, which says, no more. I die on this hill. Why? For the salvation of mankind. And I stand here today and I'll die on this hill that if we're going to get our shit together, it looks a lot like Rome. Thank you. Any questions?
Fantastic speech. As a fellow Catholic, something I've noticed in my time is that there appears the modernism, that current corruption of our day and age, is starting to pull elements of the Catholic Church away towards that tradition, that order, that which has united the Church for 2,000 years now. What would you give to the men, the fathers and aspiring fathers in this room about just keeping that corruption away, not only within their own lives, but as they seek their faith?
Very good question. And there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to run. Sacred space doesn't exist for us. We've got to create it. And the church itself has been infiltrated. I'm no fool as to sit here and think that the institution is flawless as it is. It's fallen. One thing we know for sure is that the enemies of the church, i.e. Western civilization, i.e. Western man, it's well known, well, first of all, that they're enemies of this order and have infiltrated at various times throughout our history, most notably the 1960s. If you read The School of Darkness by Bella Dodd, she explains that over 1,500 homosexual seminaries were implanted into the church. Why? To create scandal. And so there's open bigotry for multiple reasons against the church, but mainly because the enemy has sought to destroy. And so if I have a calling towards this institution, towards this order, towards the beauty of God's kingdom on earth, and I have the mental seed of degeneracy in my mind because of the smears and the attacks and the lies and the false history that we've been taught about our kingdom, I feel like I have nowhere to run. What do I tell the fathers? As opposed to revolting and stepping outside, like happened in the Protestant Revolution, and it's happening all over the place now in every regard, I pose this. I love America. I see its values counter to the kingdom, but I know its potential. I know America has been usurped. I don't believe Joe Biden's our president. But I don't deny my nationality. I don't say I'm not American. Only leftists and faggots and women do that. I'm still American. Even if it means I can only do it in my own home. I bring it to that level, but it doesn't have to be so dire. My first piece of advice is in your home. Are you praying with your family? Are you living in a state of grace? Are you orderly and structured in your living? And do you honor beauty in your house? So it happens at home, but there's a movement, and I think you made mention, a traditionalist movement that's stirring inside the church. Paul says that where darkness abounds, grace abounds even greater. And even though the church has been corrupted and the 1960s destroyed its liturgy and turned it into much of the gay stuff we see today, for 2,000 years, there's been order and structure in our form of worship, and now we refer to it as the Latin Mass, traditional Catholicism. It's gaining traction, and I invite you to seek it out. Anything else?
Thank you.